Hi, I'm Melody Maia, and I talk about everything transgender and lesbian life related that you would really like to know about but are afraid to ask. Today I have another in my naked series of videos, as you can probably see. Or really can't see all of, I'm sorry about that, but YouTube only lets me go so far. And the reason I am is because this week I asked for you to send me your questions for a Q&A. I got them through my Instagram story. So if you're not following me on Instagram, obviously you're missing a whole lot. And the first one is, if the internet wasn't around, how different do you think your life would be? Wow, that is actually a more profound question than it might seem on the surface. At the time in my life where I sought out the answer to the question of why do I feel the way that I feel, I'm not exactly sure what I would have done if the internet wasn't available for me to do that research. I don't know how much longer I would have been able to last. It was getting really bad. And of course I wouldn't have a YouTube channel. I think that goes without saying, right? I don't know, what would life have been like without any of you if I hadn't started my channel? Next question, what do you do for a living? I have no idea. Presumably, I am a professional singer, professional writer, professional YouTuber, and professional photographer. But none of those things really pay all the bills, so I do other things, of course. At least for now, and it is my greatest hope that sometime in the future I am able to support myself solely on my YouTube channel and these other artistic ventures that I have. But I'm not there yet, not even close. Which might be a good time to point out that if you have a dime to spare, please consider giving to my Patreon. This is also an interesting question because I recently saw a video by Ash Hardell where they talk about how they were outed in terms of what they do for a living. Ash was a flight attendant. That would have been amazing to get on a flight and have Ash Hardell be your flight attendant. Do you have any ideas about organic lube? Wow. I am certainly not an expert on this because it's not something I've ever had to investigate for myself. But my surgery sister, Andrea, who was on an earlier video of mine, actually was allergic to almost every kind of lube known to man. It actually caused some surgical complications for her. So she went out and tried all kinds of lube. And the one that she recommended to me eventually was actually coconut oil. 100% coconut oil actually comes in a little jar. It's not a liquid, at least not initially. When you touch it, your own body heat actually turns it into a liquid. And of course, because it is 100% coconut oil, it is also 100% organic. I'm not sure if this question is because you want to use it for dilation or for sex toys or for sex. You can use it for all those things, but of course be careful to test it with your sex toys and make sure it doesn't damage them in any way. And to clean it thoroughly afterwards, because that oil really kind of sticks. It also stains a little bit, like your sheets and that sort of thing, but I actually used it for years and I loved it quite a lot. Plus you can actually eat it and use it to cook things with. Taking a scoop for me, a scoop for my vagina. I've also recently been turned on to another lube called Sliquid, which is something that Andrea actually also recommended to me the last time I saw her. It's more like your traditional lube, so I'm not sure it's 100% organic. In fact, I pretty much doubt it is, but if it's good enough for her in terms of, you know, not making her react in any way, I gotta think it's pretty good stuff because she is like super sensitive to things. What would you say your greatest joy is of transitioning, biggest regret, and love your content? Thank you so much. My biggest joy of transitioning is the fact that I don't feel like I'm hiding anything anymore. It's an incredible load off your mind. It isn't until after you transition that you realize how much of your brain was just dedicated to just suppressing those feelings. There is a mental cost to that, and that mental cost comes with some other really bad side effects like depression and anxiety, and for some people substance abuse. Not to mention that being called she and her never gets old. Now, regrets about transitioning, I'm not quite sure I would call it a regret. In fact, I would like to reframe that a little bit because that implies that there was a choice to transitioning, and I am who I am. I had to do what I had to do to survive. If there's anything, it's that it took me so long to deal with my gender identity issues and how that really impacted the lives of so many people afterwards. I would say that's a consequence that brings with it a lot of guilt to my transition. But I can't say that was a regret because what were my alternatives exactly? Now, for those of you who are in a position where you haven't started a family and maybe you're just starting to deal with these feelings, I would say do not wait too long. You're just going to affect more and more people down the line the longer and longer you wait. And ideally you don't want to do that, but I know some of that is unavoidable. At least for those of us who weren't lucky enough to realize who we were and transition at a much younger age. What do you think of the term transtrender? Yeah, I kind of hate it. I've heard a lot of people use it, including other transgender people. And to me, it always seems like they're passing judgment on somebody else. I mean, how would you actually really know if somebody is a transgender person? For those of you who don't know, basically folks who they say transition because it's a trendy thing to do, like it's a cool thing to do. I'm going to recommend another transgender YouTuber, and that is ContraPoints, Natalie Wynn. She just actually did a whole video on this, and she made a really good point about that, which is that maybe those folks who some people think are transtrenders are really just kind of making space in their lives to explore their own gender identities. It's kind of like being bisexual bisexual in the gay community. I mean, obviously there are authentically bisexual people, but I think we sometimes doubt the bisexual identity because there's so many gay people who when they first come out will sometimes say I'm bisexual. That gives them the space and the time to explore their sexual orientation until they land upon something else maybe. Why does it really matter? Why do we want to cast out on other people? Because they're giving us a bad name? What does that mean exactly? Just because there are some people who are exploring their gender identity doesn't mean there aren't authentically transgender people. Besides, when did it become cool to be transgender? Because I must have missed that. It brings with it so much societal scrutiny and so much doubt. It's just a variation of the same argument they've been using against gay people forever, that, you know, all these people coming out as lesbian and gay and all these things are doing it to be cool. Let some people explore their gender identity. Big deal. Well, because conservative people who don't like you anyway because you're transgender are going to use it against you? Even if transgender people didn't exist, the fight wouldn't be any easier. How do you deal with dysphoria? I'm not exactly sure how much dysphoria I have anymore. Do I have none? I have some, I would say a little bit, but at this stage of my transition, it becomes really hard to kind of pick apart where just plain old insecurities as a woman comes in and where that like kind of trails off into dysphoria. I mean, sure, being transgender brings with it some extra complications in that regard. If I was not transgender, yeah, maybe I'd have a thinner waist. But for the most part, when I look in the mirror, I kind of like what I see. Now, how I dealt with dysphoria before my transition is a completely different story, and one I wouldn't recommend to anybody. One of the things I did was eat, and eat a lot. And to be honest, I used to masturbate a whole lot. And of course, I would also just suppress it all and pretend that I wasn't transgender. And what you need to do to dispel your dysphoria is different for everybody. Hormones help with that. Changing up your gender expression can help with that. The closer and closer you on the outside become aligned with your gender identity on the inside, the better you're going to feel. But the point is to do something, because doing nothing isn't going to make the dysphoria go away. When you have gender dysphoria, you're fighting for what you want your life to be like, and you just have to take the first step. And where you end up can be someplace wonderful. Okay, here's something lighter. What is your favorite show? That may be the hardest question of all. I don't know if I have one favorite show. I tend to gravitate towards sci-fi and fantasy things. Star Trek Discovery, really high up there right now. Oh gosh, I really love that show. It's really good. And probably another one would be Supergirl, because it just feels so empowering. And I'm talking about before they added Nicole Maines as a transgender character, which if you aren't watching and you're transgender or in any way LGBTQ+, you really need to be watching that show. How do you deal with hate? That is a good one, because I find the emotional labor of my life to be one of the most frustrating things. I see a lot of hate on a daily basis, and what I've decided to do for my own mental health is to basically just not always engage with it. I can't always engage with it. In a practical sense, I don't know if you've ever noticed in my comments, but when I get a hate comment, I don't know why people do that, because 99.99% of the time I won't engage. I just delete those comments, because this is the family that I built. This is the community that I built. So if you come at me with hate, you're just going to be gone, and I won't even tell you why. When someone asks, "Are you a tranny?" what would be your response? Well, I have been asked that in the past. I have found one of the most effective things to do is to ask them, "What's a tranny and why would you ask me that?" Because that puts the onus back on them, and I have found that that often very much embarrasses them. And yeah, I kind of use my passing privilege as a weapon in that regard, because I am putting the seed of doubt in their heads. And if they come back with another question like, "What I mean is, are you a real woman?" I'll still play dumb. I'll say, "A real woman? What are you talking about?" And that can just go on and on and on. Until he gets to the point that maybe he shouldn't be asking this question, and maybe he has some prejudices of his own to work on. Okay, a couple more questions to end it on, and they deal with relationships. How did you recognize the difference between a crush and actually loving someone? Especially in the lesbian community, I find that so many people confuse crushes with love. I'm not going to say that love at first sight doesn't exist, because I do know some people who got together very quickly and are still together today, years later. However, it is very rare. Those feelings of always having to be around somebody and just wanting to be in their presence all the time and all that kind of thing, those kind of fluttery feelings, those serve a purpose. They're there to help you nurture a relationship into something that might be more. Because I've noticed that around the 3-month mark, that's when people start realizing that those crush feelings are going away. And that's when most relationships start to go bad, because that's when you realize you're not supposed to be together. Now, some people, of course, carry on way beyond that. If you can't imagine yourself long-term with this person, as in getting married, and my advice for that is get out. Get out as fast as possible. If you think your partner is perfect, then you really just don't know your partner very well. We all have lots and lots of baggage, and we are all not flawless. We're just looking for the person who cares enough to stick around even when they know all your flaws. Love isn't that person who makes you feel bad about yourself. It's that person who makes you feel like you want to do better. Okay, and our final question, and the easiest one to answer. Are you dating anyone? No. I am, as a good friend used to say all the time, single as a Pringle. Okay, if any of you have any other questions that I didn't get to, please put them in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them. As always, my social media is down below. One of my greatest patrons who's been around for quite a while is Julie Jolly. And if you want a shout out in a future video, consider becoming a patron. And on that note, please like this video by giving it a thumbs up, please share this video, and please subscribe. And see you around the interwebs.